Good morning, everybody. It's Chad with Colorado Giants. I'm in the hot huts right now. I've made my selections. Today is May 4th. It's time to plant my pumpkin plants. Stay tuned and I'll tell you how I do it. Transplanting your baby giant pumpkin plants can be something that's sort of intimidating. You have a lot invested into your pumpkin patch, into your plants, into your seeds, lots of prep, but really it's not that big of a deal and you don't have to big deal it. It's just like transplanting anything else with a few extra steps if you want to be extra. If you don't, treat it like any other plant, dig a hole, stuff it in the ground, and let her rip, tater chip. So I am going to give you a few of the nuances that I do when it comes to planting these behemoths in the patch, and we'll go from there. If you like these videos and the content that I put out, hit the subscribe button, it's right down there, and then hit the bell so you get a notification when a new video comes out. If you're really feeling fancy, go ahead and go to coloradogiants.com where you can find Colorado Giants t-shirts, hats, coffee mugs. Still working on those thongs, but we even sell seeds. Still give those seeds out for free in the winter, but if you want them now, you gotta pay. So let's just jump right into it. I have my plants selected in both of them. The other one's over there that you can't see. Tell you what I'm gonna do, you can watch. Let's go. Here we are with two plants that I have selected. These two are the winners. This one's going to be my backup, and I have my other two plants back here that you might be able to see behind me. But I've chosen the ones that look the best. I mean, obviously, that's what we're going for. That's why you start more than one. And in case you don't know, for every one planting site that you have for a giant pumpkin plant, I would recommend you start 3 seeds, plant 2 plants, and eventually you'll get down to just 1 plant, because you never know what's going to happen. I had a plant that I gave away to a friend to give away to her friend that started a ribbon vine at a young age. That's something for a competition plant you don't want to grow because it's just kind of wacky and weird, and you don't want that. So you want to pick your best plants. This plant I did not select because, and it's hard to see, the first leaf is this one. So this plant is going to want to grow in this direction, but its main stump is going this way, so that it's going to want to lay back over on itself. The plant looks really good, but just because of how that first growth is coming up, it's not ideal. The watermelons are going to hang out in the hot huts for a little while longer. But even though I do like this plant, just its orientation, we're not going to go with that one because we have better options. These ones are standing, you know, fairly straight up. These ones are starting to vine a little bit. They want to go, and I want them to go. And in fact, the roots are poking out of the bottom of all these. We got lots of roots coming out of the bottom, way more than I thought. This one is the 2560 Ginger. This one is my 1676, 1646, you know, something like that. I must have been having a dyslexic day. I wrote the numbers incorrectly on here, but I know what they are. So yeah, that's that. One thing that you do need to consider and should take into account when you're planting your plants is the day. Today's the 4th. I would like to have gotten them in yesterday night after the soil gassed out a little bit from the peroxide, but it was a really hot day. It was in the mid 80s yesterday, and today it's just going to be the mid 60s. It's going to be cloudy, it's going to be rainy. It's an ideal day to do some transplanting because you don't want to plant the plants on like a super hot day where they're going to get stressed and wilted, and it's going to, you know, just kind of freak the plant out a little bit. Cooler days, cloudy days, cool, cloudy days in sequence are the best days, just so the plant has, you know, a day or 2 or 3 to kind of establish itself, get used to the soil that it's in. You realize it's not in a pot anymore. It's going to chill out. Those roots will start to expand, and then it'll be fine from there. But whatever you can do to, transplant in not super hot days, that's pretty ideal. If you have to, and so be it. On to the planting. You really only need, one thing, a little shovel or a hand, which you can be shaped like a shovel. That would work. So I got my little trowel to dig a hole, and then I use the mycorrhiza I get from Ron Wallace, as well as the Azos, and then Root Shield this year. Usually I just use these two products in addition to Ron Wallace's starter packs. I had a bonehead moment. I forgot to order them, so I'm not going to use those this year, but I am going to use Root Shield in addition. Root Shield, again, on our quest to keep the disease down through the year. This is a beneficial inoculant to help keep the plant's roots, away from the disease. Basically, it was explained to me, this is like a root condom. Keeps the bad out and the good in. The only thing that we really need to explain for all of you new people, if you've grown before, you know this. But in detail, in a little bit more detail, the first leaf is this one. The plant will want to go this direction. So if I orient it the way that I want to, because I want it to grow front to back towards you guys at the camera, the first leaf needs to point me, and that means the plant is going to go that way. So when I put this in the ground, I just don't want to put it in the ground willy-nilly. I want to have a purposeful direction so that the plant will go where I want it to go. If I were to plant it opposite, the vine would start to run this way. I'd have to kind of bend it around in a horseshoe, and you don't want to do that. It's important to note you don't want to mess with the root ball so much. So I watered these really good last night, knowing that I would plant them this morning. So the root ball should be intact. My pots, I have cut them already, and I Gorilla Taped them together. So all I really need to do is slit the Gorilla Tape, put it into the hole, cover it back up. So enough jibber jabber and talking. I'll get to it. Space the plants, maybe 3 feet apart, so they do have some room to grow, because I want to get about 6 feet of length on them before I make my suggestion, 6 feet-ish, or before I make my selection. Or if there's just one that's a standout, I'll just go ahead and make that determination right away once it's maybe 2 or 3 feet long. Just depends. But you want to give yourself room. You don't want to plant them like right next to one another, because then they'll grow and they'll start to get tangled up, and that's not a good time. The only other thing that you need to think about is how you are going to grow your plant. These ones I'm going to grow in more of a Christmas tree pattern. So it's going to go in the back right there. That other one I'm going to plant, more towards the middle of the hot hut, because I want to do the Mike Schmidt spider pattern, where I'm going to wrap the vines back. That will be a little challenging this year, as my plants are going to be shorter and wider. So that pattern really would be better if it was longer and skinnier, but we'll make it work. So with that being said, let's get to work. All I'm doing right now is digging, my rough draft of a hole. A lot of people, used to say that you had to make a big old mound and stuff like that. That's a little old school way of thinking. You don't have to do a mound, but I want my plant to be at like a 45-degree angle, so that vine just lays down real nice like. So that was real easy. Piece of cake. This new plant has tons of roots coming out the bottom too, so that's pretty awesome. I'm gonna take my pocket knife, try not to poke into the plant all that much, as I just did and cut a bunch of roots. Whoops. I should probably get a super duper sharp razor blade from the garage, but that ship has sailed. And I'm going to cut that tape and expose half the plant, half the root ball anyway. And wowee, there's a ton of roots on this guy. That's awesome. That's what you want to see. So what I'm going to do is I take a handful of mycorrhiza, put it on the plant, put whatever's left over in the hole, take a pinch of my root shield, put it on this side, whatever's left I put in the hole, and the same with the azos. Pinch on the roots, throw whatever's left in the hole. I'm going to put this back, and I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And obviously I'm being really careful and paying attention on how the plants are oriented, and I'm not like trying to squish the leaves or anything like that. This stuff, you have to do this because it works on direct root contact. So once these microorganisms come in contact with the roots, then they kind of start to activate and become alive. So that's why you have to have direct contact. So the first leaf, I'm turning the plant, pointing it towards me. This is pretty easy because there's so many roots in here. And then all I'm going to do is cover it up. I mean, it's really that simple. I give it a couple of strong, I'm not like giving it CPR, and I'm kind of compacting around the root ball, but I'm not like, you know, just giving it a super squish or anything like that. So there we go. What a lot of people do and what I am going to do myself, if I could find my knife, is take off this first leaf, or the second leaf, sorry. The second leaf is just going to get in the way. So I'll take that off because that will inhibit the plant from laying down, and it'll just get in the way later. So get that taken care of and out of the way right now. And that's how you plant a giant pumpkin plant. And I am being aware and cognizant of not compacting the soil around here as best as I can, just because this will be the primo root zone for a long time until the plant grows, and that shifts to down yonder on the plant a little bit. So that's it. That's the detailed talking version. I will still film myself doing these ones. I'll go over there, do those ones, but that's how you plant a giant pumpkin plant. One thing that I think is really cool as I plant this last plant is the amount of worms. So there's like one worm. Come here, you little. There's a pregnant worm, 2 worms, a little baby worm, 3 worm, and there was several more worms that I just dug up and that I've dug up in every hole. I always, you always see worms, but this year the amount of worms that are in my soil are really, another worm, are really above average for me. So that's Really cool to see, honestly. I'm pretty happy about that, because that means, you know, all the work that I've put in trying to make my soil better, like the biology of my soil better, make this the best darn dirt that a pumpkin could grow in, is working. Because if you have worms, then you have happy soil, and those worms make your soil happier. Happier soil makes your plants happier, which eventually gets you a big pumpkin. So that's something that I thought was pretty cool that I wanted to share with you guys. And that, as they say, is that. So, planting your giant pumpkin plants into your patch from your seedling pots is really not that big of a deal. You just want to have kind of everything you need on hand nearby, so you're not making a bunch of trips. You're minimizing the impact on your soil. Now, I'm just going to kind of close back up the hoop houses, make sure these are really tight as I want them. And now, you know, we kind of really stop goofing around and get to the business of trying to grow a giant plant that will eventually grow a giant pumpkin. The last step really is to water everything in real good. I'm going to water it in. I've been watering my soil heavily, so you probably saw in the video that the soil was very moist. And that's on purpose. I want it really moist because I'm not going to water a whole lot the next few days. Get my CO2 sensor out of the way. So I'm not going to water a whole heck of a lot because I don't really warm up my water. So the moisture in the soil that's retained in here for the most part is going to be nice and warm. That'll keep the plants happy and get those roots expanding out from the pot shape that they were in. And yeah, don't fertilize for a few days. Leave the plants alone for probably, I'm going to throw out 5 days. Don't fertilize them with pretty much anything. If you have to, you have to, but I know it's in my soil. I know how the plants look. I'm not going to hit them with anything for 5 days at a minimum, because I want them to relax. I want them to extend out their roots and just get used to their new environment. There's lots of time for nailing them with fertilizer and getting that growth running, but this is a marathon and not a sprint. So don't be like, they're in the ground and I'm gonna miracle grow them to death. You know, just leave them alone, let them relax. Lots of time for fertilizer. And with that, that's it. My pumpkins are in the ground. It's time to grow some giant plants so we can grow some giant pumpkins. Appreciate you watching the video, and we'll catch you in the next one. See ya.